judging by the policies that he wanted to implement when he was running, I kept repeating the same things over and over again. Everything that he's doing is inflationary. Okay? Mass deportation is inflationary. Where you at least could have goods.
Most of the party
affordability
is diving
for goods
headlong into this, squarely behind Donald Trump. It does show his clout in the Republican Party to change free traders into pro-tariff Republican senators.
It has been Democrats who
I think it's a warning sign because we have 18 special elections in this year so far, and 17 out of the 18 Democrats have won because they do not believe, the American people do not believe that he's doing enough to lower costs. So if costs go up, it's a big red flag for Republicans because I'm not sure they can come back from it.
And it sounds like they are, in fact, going to go up in the short term. We'll see about the long term. Jake Tapper standing by for the lead. It starts right now.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Tariffs on Russia? What kind of trade do we have with Russia?
Welcome to the lead,
at
and
this
I
point?
am Jake Tapper. Our breaking news just moments ago. President Trump officially announcing widespread, what he calls reciprocal tariffs, at least 10% on practically all goods coming into the United States, plus higher rates on dozens of countries that have the highest trade deficits with the United States.
But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries who didn't want to do that.
I do like the sneaky move that they did where they added that in the fine print. They added this tiny thing where they're like, well, they're doing currency manipulation and other restrictions in trade, like making it seem as though there's, when you add that in the fine print, obviously it could be anything that they're talking about to make this calculation.
The world
it's not
economy
fucking
could end up impacting every American in the short term and the long term, raising prices in the short term at a time when budgets are already stretched thin from years of inflation. President Trump says that the tariffs in the long run will create more jobs in the United States and revive certain manufacturing sectors and even entire regions by forcing companies to relocate their manufacturing to the United States, in some cases back to the United States. It is a gamble and it is risky. Some Republican lawmakers are not sold.
In the long run, we're all dead. Short run matters too.
Bro. I'm sorry, but the fucking liberal media is so cucked by Donald Trump. If Joe Brandon did something like this, they would be calling to assassinate him. Okay, but when it's Trump doing it, they're like, well, it's a risky gamble.
They're both
I
Republicans.
hate the media,
Let's go straight to the White House
so much.
Our own Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, walk us through
Once
the
again,
details.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous of Trump's riz. I'm jealous that he's able to do this.
They just got it from President Trump as he made this announcement.
The market reaction after hours, I've never seen anything like this. This is worse than the worst case scenario in terms of what the market expected. CNBC reporting that the 10% baseline will go into effect on April 5th. The reciprocal tariffs will go into effect on April 9th. Canada and Mexico tariff stays at 25%. The White House is not looking for deals on this.
2 or 3 times higher than that as part of those reciprocal tariffs for what the White House and the president have determined are unfair trading practices, they say, against some of these closest U.S. allies that now will be paying much higher than that baseline rate. And just looking at this right off the bat, Jake, you see European Union, it is going to be a 20% reciprocal tariff, Taiwan 32%, Vietnam 46% reciprocal tariff, Japan is coming in at 24%, and India at 26%. Just to give you a small preview, Jake, into these tariffs that the White House is now going to be implementing. We've heard from senior officials about varying dates of when those tariffs will go into place. The president said immediately just now, in addition to that 25% tariff on all foreign-made cars. What you are seeing here are the most expansive tariffs that we have seen from President Trump, including from his first term. And as he noted here in the Rose Garden, this is something he's been talking about for decades and certainly did on the campaign trail this time around. But of course, the question is how other nations will respond to this and how the stock market will respond to this. The White House seemed to suggest earlier in a briefing with reporters that they have very little appetite for any kind of haggling with countries that are trying to reduce their tariffs in the lead up to this to try to get this to be lower. And also they issued a warning, Jake, to countries that have promised they will retaliate in response to these new tariffs from President Trump.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks so much. Look out for Caitlin in just a few hours on The Source. That's weeknights at 9 Eastern, only here on CNN. CNN's Daniel Dale, our fact checker, was closely listening to the president's remark to check out and suss out the facts there. Daniel, what President Trump had to say about Canadian dairy tariffs, is that accurate?
It was not even close to accurate, Jake. So President Trump said Canada treats the first little carton of milk that the U.S. exports as a low tariff product, but then after that, Canada applies massive tariffs in excess of 200%. It is not just the first little carton of milk that has low tariffs. In fact, under the USMCA deal that Trump himself negotiated, tens of thousands of metric tons per year of U.S. milk are treated as tariff-free by Canada. That is guaranteed tariff-free market access by Canada. And here's the key thing, Jake. The U.S. is not exporting even close to that tariff-free quota maximum, so none of those hefty Canadian tariffs above the quota level are actually being applied. And that was just one of the false claims he made, Jake. He also offered what I think is some pretty alternative history, saying that the U.S. was at proportionally its wealthiest from 1789 to 1913. The U.S. is way wealthier today by any reasonable measure, including per capita income, living standards. And then he said that the U.S. would not have had the Great Depression had the U.S. stayed with tariffs. Well, there was a pretty infamous tariff in 1930, the Smoot-Hawley tariff, that is widely seen to have contributed to worsening that Great Depression. He also repeated his claim that the U.S. took in hundreds of billions of dollars that China paid because of tariffs he imposed in his first term. It is U.S. importers who made those tariff payments. Study after study has found that U.S. consumers and businesses ate the overwhelming majority of the costs of those tariffs. And so it is just not true that China was paying that money. He also falsely said that the U.S. had the highest inflation in its history under President Biden. Yes, of course, it was high. It was troubling, not even close to a record. And he said that gasoline is, quote, way under $3 now. It is true in some states, but the national average today, according to AAA, is about $3.24 per gallon, Jake.
Dude, if your logs have nothing in them, I'm going to
just joking. That was a lot. Daniel Dale, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Let's bring in CNN's Phil Mattingly and Vanessa Yurkevich
right.
to talk about the economies
within Trump's first
and the economic impacts of this all. Phil, so let's start with you. You have
rebuilding American manufacturing is not possible within the 4-year time frame that Trump will be president. But Trump won't be president for 4 years. He'll continue being president.
Impact the average American.
It's a middle ground of the maximal approach that had been laid out, and I think options that had been presented to President Trump. What does that actually mean? That means this is more significant, more consequential, more grand on a scale when it comes to tariffs than anything we have seen in roughly 70 to 80 years. It is a complete reorientation of the global trading system as we've known it for the better part of the post-World War II era. The reciprocal tariffs did not go in full. The president saying he cut them in half, therefore it's not necessarily tariff for tariff.
Right, he was proposing a much bigger deal, even though this is a big deal.
Why do I seem so chill in the face of all this?
They are adding in non-tariff
barriers. What can I do?
What they believe are restrictions that other countries
What can I do, or what can I say?
The scale of them, country by country, for the 60-ish countries that they are actually
I've given up. You know what I mean? What do you want me to do? I have no.
At the campaign, he talked about having.
I have nothing to say or do in this process.
And then he talked about reciprocal tariffs.
The really Trump glazers are going, yeah, this is base.
That's exactly what he did today. I think people need to understand. I'm actually, if you look at the markets right now in futures, I don't necessarily know that everybody's grasping, one, the scale of this,
right,
and two, just how serious his advisors.
I also do think that crisis like this presents an opportunity. So I don't know. Maybe this is the accelerant that is capitalism. This is the accelerant that inevitably brings about the contradictions to the forefront, making Americans realize that the volatility of their material circumstances are far too much to bear, and therefore they don't magically become revolutionary figures or whatever. That's not my assumption, but they realize that this harm is being caused by right-wing reactionary charlatans.
On all $3.3 trillion worth of goods coming into this country now, at least 10%. But as the president mentioned, there are higher tariffs on countries that he says are bad actors. Ultimately, though, he says he cut those tariffs in half. sort of to play more fair or to give these countries a break. But let's just take China, for example. Now, a 34% tariff on China. We get a lot of electronics from China. Vietnam, a 46% tariff on Vietnam now. We got a lot of shoes, appliances from there. Colombia, a 10% tariff. We get coffee from there. Bananas. We get bananas from Ecuador, Guatemala, Costa Rica. Now at least a 10% tariff there. And ultimately, we have these auto tariffs also coming tomorrow, a 25% tax on all foreign imports of cars. On a country like South Korea, for example, they are the country that has Hyundai, right? So they are going to experience a 25% tariff on autos, and now under this new reciprocal tariff plan, an additional 25% on all exports coming out of South Korea. So for any product that Americans import and buy from abroad, at least a 10% tariff. If you do not see a Made in America sticker or tag, you're going to be paying some. Consumers, this is really important because it's going to hit everything from food to cars to appliances to pharmaceuticals. It's just so wide sweeping. As Phil mentioned, it could have been worse based on what we were hearing. But ultimately, if you think about anything that you consume and buy from abroad, you're likely going to see some sort of price increase in the near future.
All right, Vanessa Yurkevich and Phil Mattingly, thanks so much. Let's bring in former Biden senior economics aide, Gene Sperling. He left the administration to work with the Kamala Harris presidential campaign. Gene, are there any of the tariffs, any of the moves that President Trump announced today that you think could benefit the United States?
I think that in general, the focus on relocating manufacturing where it's going to be part of our economic future is one that was a major Biden message. I think the focus on using tariffs in strategic areas where we think either we've been treated unfairly or it's important to our future, like semiconductors, the CHIPS program, electric batteries. Those are, so the overall message done right is one President Biden focused on. But what you see here is the fact that, you know, what might be a good, simplistic, historically rewritten speech in a campaign will ultimately turn out, come down to the effect on the economy. The expression, the devil's in the details. Well, here, the devil is in prices for consumers. The devil's in jobs, the devil's in uncertainty. And what we've seen so far, despite the Trump rhetoric, is that he was inheriting, he likes to say beautiful, a rather beautiful soft landing. People are expecting growth to be over 2%, inflation coming down towards 2%. He has set off an almost unprecedented amount of uncertainty at every level: investor, major manufacturers, small businesses, and a dramatic increase in a loss of consumer confidence. In fact, the conference board, Jake, said that over the next 12 months, it's now the worst it's been in 12 years. That means worse than the pandemic. So remember the United Negro College Fund used to say, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Well, a soft landing is a terrible thing to waste, and so what's going to come down is what is the actual impact on prices. I think will be very negative for consumers. What will it be on actual the economy, the strength, manufacturing? I think we're already seeing the uncertainty is being harmful. That's going to be the ultimate measure.
So obviously, President Trump has a big picture goal here to bring jobs back to the United States as firms relocate here to avoid these tariffs, to make it cheaper to build in Arizona and Indiana than to build in Taiwan or China. Do you think that will happen?
Again,
yeah, no, he's talking about the UNCF,
a smart strategic way to do it. I think he should have built off the CHIPS program, built off the Biden's IRA. Those use not just sticks, but carrots. They were about incentivizing those locations in the areas like electric batteries, like semiconductors. More we could do on AI data centers, quantum computing, and also just making sure our steel and auto industries are being treated fairly. But I think he has three major blind spots One is he has no sense of inputs. And I know that sounds like a complicated thing, but look at pickup trucks. Pickup trucks are maybe the favorite truck of many of Trump's supporters. A huge percentage of the parts that come in from other countries. Right. That makes them more affordable. So you heard the same thing from Mattel about making Barbie dolls. So he seems to forget that in order to not only produce things here, but produce them at an attractive price requires a more complicated view of trade. What I hear everywhere from big companies is they have almost a war room on supply. They are worried about supply constraints. They're worried about the prices. They are all worried about passing on the prices. And Jake, why am I here talking to you as a non-White House person? Well, it wasn't that we didn't have a strong economy. The U.S. had the strongest growth. It wasn't that we didn't have strong jobs. We had the strongest jobs of all time. I'm sitting here talking to you because people were unhappy about prices. And it's shocking to me that he seems to care so little about how much basic consumer prices, from avocados to vegetables to iPhones, are going to go up for people, and cars by thousands, maybe over $10,000.
It's pretty funny.
And I just feel like it's really a blind spot. It surprises me politically, as well as being questionable economically. And I don't think things are going to go
pretty
well
funny
for him
that
at all with this proposal.
And I've said this time and time again, like, judging by the policies that he wanted to implement when he was running, I kept repeating the same things over and over again. Everything that he's doing is inflationary. Okay? Mass deportation is inflationary. You're eradicating the low-cost, second-class citizen, permanent underclass labor force without any mechanism of replacement. Now, obviously, I care about the humanity beyond, like, the impact of this on the economy. I care about the humanity first and foremost. But that is what precisely would lead to hyperinflation to begin with. Then also the fucking tariffs. Tariffs are an entry fee paid by the American manufacturers, paid by the American importers. This will increase the price of all goods. It's like slapping on a universal sales tax. Every single thing he's done so far has been inflationary. It is wild.
But to seem to not even care about people's 401ks. But I tell you, Jake, I've been talking to people all over the world, and what's troubling is not the stock market, but why the stock market's going down. It's going down because there is massive uncertainty, and it's at every level. And I learned this a long time ago when we went through the debt limit crisis in 2011. All you need for the economy to go weak is for everybody to pause at the same time. Everybody to pause on their vacation, the discretionary spending, and building that next factory. And yeah, he'll be able to do, brags about places to come.
54% tariffs on China.
The proof of the pudding will be in the economy. And I think that he's headed for trouble. And I know what my Democratic peers are going to say, and they're going to have truth on their side. He is using this trade policy to actually raise taxes and prices at the same time he cuts their Medicaid and cuts taxes for well-off.
All right.
I don't think that's a good economic brew or a good political brew.
All right, Gene Sperling, thank you so much. And later in the program, we're going to get reaction from Republican Senator Jim Banks of Indiana. The White House today pushing back on reports that President Trump told his inner circle that Elon Musk will be stepping back soon.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you? I said he's going to defend Elon.
A political liability for President Trump. We'll discuss that. And
what did I tell you? I said he's going to make a statement that's like kind of in defense of Elon, even though he's cutting him out. And that's precisely what has taken place today. But you said he hates losers? Wait, no, he does. This is it. I told you down to the messaging strategy. Donald Trump, for Elon Musk, is dead to Donald Trump going forward. The only time he will mention Elon Musk is like lightly to defend him. He will not mention him any longer. For Trump, Musk is a scapegoat and a liability, but for now, he's still useful. Yeah, he'll put the heat on him, and then he'll put the beat on him. He's a fucking loser. He's a political liability. He is not the attack dog that he wanted to present himself as, which is going to be the second thing I'm going to be talking about, which was, as of earlier, the most significant thing that I was supposed to talk about, which is the Wisconsin race. But I'm not done with the tariffs yet because it has been glorious. Smoking on the market pack has been a fantastic moment for me. J.D. Pondon, ladies and gentlemen, he is doing it. Permanent first world genocide. The Treatlerites will all suffer. The suburbs will scream bloody murder. We will disrupt America's global hegemonic trade status. That is right. Are you enjoying the show? Refill your popcorn. You'll love this next part, he said, except you can't refill your popcorn because it's more expensive now. That's right. Even popcorn is going to become more expensive. Just kidding. Corn is like the one thing that's heavily subsidized. So it's probably and made in the United States. That's why it's in every fucking food that we consume. So who knows? But yes, let's take a look once again. One big point amid all the headlines. I was texting with the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, senior Washington correspondent for the CNBC. And she confirms that the 34% tariff on China is on top of the previous 20%. So that means the rate on China will be 54% when the tariffs take effect. 54%. Trump to impose higher than expected tariffs. Markets drop. Live updates. Plan to impose steep tariffs on many countries, including 34% on China, except it's 54%. Just kidding. 20% on European Union, 46% on Vietnam, 32% on Taiwan. That'll never not be funny. 32% tariffs on Taiwan is a permanently funny thing to do. It is hilarious. It's like, it feels like he's doing that for Xi. I don't know what to say beyond, it seems like he's doing that for Xi specifically. Trump also signing an executive order to close the de minimis exemption from China. It's a small amount of goods compared to everything he put tariffs on today, but the de minimis imports from China are north of $20 billion. No more Temu, no more fucking goods being exempted because they're insanely fucking cheap. I'm serious. He's killing his own drop shippers, by the way. He's literally killing his drop shippers. That's what's going on. So respect. Breaking MAGA dad reaction. He's using our economic might as to wedge the equilibrate with other economies. Equilibrate? Yeah. I mean, your MAGA dad is just repeating what MAGA is saying. So that's all this is. Equilibrate is a real word, dumb shatter. Yeah, it's not. It's just not one I've ever used or encountered. Equilibrate? No, equilibrate? What? Shut up! All right, I'm never using that word, so it doesn't matter. CNBC said this is the worst of the worst case scenarios I covered earlier. CNBC anchor says the market reaction after hours, I've never seen anything like this. This is worse than the worst case scenario in terms of what the market expected. Laos getting hit with 48%. Madagascar, Vietnam with 46%. Sri Lanka 44%. Myanmar 44%. Bangladesh 37%. Morocco 10%. El Salvador 10%. Saudi Arabia 10%. Egypt 10%. Turkey 10%. My goats are thriving. Fun fact, the Boston Tea Party was a protest against a tariff. Yeah. You guys don't deserve South African wine anyway. Yeah, everything will get more expensive. Every single thing will get more expensive, for the record. Every single thing that you're purchasing will get more expensive as a consequence of this. That is if these are fully implemented. The reason why I say that is if these are fully implemented is because there is one thing that Trump cares about, and that is retaliation, okay? Being unpopular. If the market screams bloody murder and the people are proper terrified of the price increases that are slated to happen, and they rise up in arms potentially, then Trump might back away from it. He is unstable. He's already went back and forth on this shit. He might just like delay the tariffs or whatever. So who knows? If he were to implement a stimulus check in this process, by the way, if he were to hit stimmies on this, I need you to understand something. If he were to also give stimmies on this is full Erdogan. No joke. If he were to expand the welfare state as a reaction to this, it would quite literally be the Erdogan initiative. Hyperinflation with a little bit of money that you're offering to the citizens in an effort to make sure that they don't die. European Commission President von der Leyen will deliver a statement at 5 a.m. Brussels time following U.S. tariff announcement. She doesn't speak in our name. Nice. Tesla truth owner. Tesla owner in Europe says Ursula von der Leyen does not speak in our name. Yeah. Nintendo Switch 2 would originally be a Japanese import, which would have been 24%. But Nintendo just announced that they're moving productions to Vietnam to avoid tariffs. But Trump just announced a 46% tariff on Vietnam. Nobody's getting egg or Switch 2 sad. I think there are a lot worse things to worry about than being able to afford the Switch 2 with what might happen to them, with what might happen to the American economy. Because not to be too much of an Econ 101 Andy, but like when the cost of goods get higher and higher and people's purchasing power is diminished in the process, company profits go down. There's no movement. There's no growth. When there's no growth, there's layoffs, which cooks you even further. And then you sink further and further away with no way out of it. I'm no stonks freak, but the market charts seem kind of off, like they're not reporting accurately or something. What do you mean? I've said this over and over again. I've said this time and time again. Americans are treatlerites. Treats are the things that hold the treats are the things as the fabric that holds the society together. When jalapeno poppers are no longer $5, you're cooked. People will come out in droves. People come out in arms, dude. Americans are so hyper-focused on the cost of living that they voted for a guy who was saying, I'm going to actually lower the prices by deporting 20 million people. They didn't even care. That's why I kept making the argument that if Kamala Harris were to come out and be like, I'm going to assassinate the Walton family on television, and that is going to lower the price of bread, every American will be on board with it. Not because they love ceremonious extrajudicial assassinations of incredibly wealthy people or whatever, but only because they were like, all right, whatever it takes. That seems fine. And the greatest example that I pointed to was Kamala Harris being like, I'm going to do price caps. You're smart, but you did not predict Taiwan tariff exposed. No, I covered it before. I just thought it was so stupid that it made no sense, that I genuinely didn't think he would do that. Because he's mentioned it before. He floated Taiwan tariffs before. And we all thought it was a joke. Because why the fuck would you tariff Taiwan? Swedish insurer Folksam diverts 160 million Tesla stake. Oh shit. Gamers are now mad that physical copies are now projected to be $90, digital to be $80 due to production costs, employee compensation, international asset, research consultation, business maintenance ranging from food, employee benefits, janitorial to server costs. Yeah, no, price of... Yeah, wait till the fucking Asmongoldиans realize that games are going to be more expensive as well. With seemingly no fucking larger titties either, which is something that I think they care about. Stop equating food and having a living to fucking treats. It's not treats, it's our fucking food and jobs. No, they are fucking right, stupid. Stop equating food and having a living to treats. I mean, it's treats too. You have to understand, it's fucking treats as well. It's not just surviving, okay? When I say treats, I mean treats. I mean buying a television every other year that is like marginally a little bit better is a treat. That's a treat. And many Americans do that because that's one of the only places where they can spend their money on, because the important things that actually provide upward social mobility or some semblance of upward social mobility, like fucking college education, is impossible to purchase. Other things necessary for survival, like healthcare, is impossible. Healthcare has become a privilege in this country. A privilege that only privileged people have. That's a treat. Guns are treats, but guns are made in America, so they're fine. You can buy more guns. Most likely. Stop trying to be the friend who's too woke about this. So our jobs are treats? Is that what I said? Did I at any point say that? Why is it that the earwax that you have stuck in your goddamn earlobe my issue? Why are you making it my issue? Why are you making it my problem? Why are you making it everybody else's problem? It's so fucking annoying. You're like, I didn't understand what you were saying, and I made up my own mind about what you were saying because I didn't actually fully comprehend what you were saying. And now I'm going to fucking freak out on you for a thing that you didn't say.
On that chart. Why is that?
I'm not sure.
Not sure. Okay, I imagine that has to do potentially because they're already in negotiations previously with the 25%. I'm not sure if you saw the initial market reaction.
I haven't.
So equity futures slid on the news. You had talked about how we're in a detox period. Do you feel that we're still in that period, or are you starting to get a little bit concerned?
Well, the detox period has nothing to do with the tariffs. The detox period is off this incredible level of government spending that we've had, an unsustainable amount of fiscal stimulus. And look, that's got to stop. That's got to stop. So
this is what I mean.
Can we continue weaning ourselves off of that? And as we see private...
Do you understand? This is what sedates the masses, okay? This is what sedates the fucking masses. Do you understand? And this is an old ass, this is from 2016. It's even worse now. This is what I mean when I say treats. All that shit is relatively affordable, so you think, oh, I can go to a McDonald's. I can get a new household furniture. I can get a new clothes because it's cheap. And it makes you feel like you are better off. And that is the very fabric that holds American society together. That's what I'm talking about. And the moment that that shit is also expensive because of these actions, the moment, and the reason why all that shit is not expensive, the reason why all that shit is inexpensive is because of free trade. The moment that these things also skyrocket in prices, you have nothing. You have nothing holding it together. You have nothing holding society together. You're like, this is what good is this? What good is this project if I can't get a fucking new iPad? What good is all this endless bloodshed in the third world? This is what I mean.
Narrow margin issued the reconciliation instructions, and then he also passed a clean continuing resolution on the Senate side.
Is there anything we can do to fight back against tariffs? No, there's nothing you can do. You can't fight back against tariffs by subscribing for $6 before Twitch increases the price of subscription, or for free with a Twitch Prime before Twitch decides to eliminate Twitch Prime. That's what you can do. Just kidding. There's not really anything. There's nothing you could do. I guess leave the United States, but every other market will be impacted by this too. So there's really nothing you can do in general. You can also get gifted a sub if you're lucky. I think Twitch lowered the price of gifted subs.
Interest was deductible, but now it's got to be only on American cars.
So how do you do all this at the same time that market participants, fiscal hawks, budget hawks in Congress are concerned about the deficit? How are you going to have this big reconciliation package?
Well, I think, as we've seen, there's a lot of room to cut spending. So I think, again, where Republicans have incredible unity is on the spending cuts, as we're seeing.
So when it comes to the timeline of all of this, I do notice that now reconciliation, it seems to be an agreement between the House and the Senate that they're willing to consider about raising...
Andrew episode Mont, economists in Israel, economic officials in Israel are in complete shock over the Trump administration's decision to impose a 17% tariff on Israel. We are in shock. We were sure that the decision to completely cancel tariffs on imports from U.S. would prevent this move, but it didn't happen. Yeah, get fucked, dude. Get fucked. I mean, it's not enough. 17% is a tiny, minuscule.
So that's when you plan to get this tax bill done.
100%.
So if we could put both these stories together today, the president comes out with tariffs.
Trump is anti-Semitically imposing tariffs on Israel. Trump is anti-Semitically doing BDS. Who is going... Okay, Forward Magazine article, I'm imagining, okay? Forward Magazine article. Title, Trump stood against boycott, divestments, and sanctions. Now... he does the very same. Subtitle, is Trump Hamas?
in the CBO scoring, so that will be something running in the background. And as the president said, we've taken in several $100 billion on the China tariffs, but those don't get scored.
Do you feel that you need to have enough revenue raised from these tariffs before this reconciliation package comes to play in Congress?
Well, I don't think we have to have the revenues raised. And look, you know, we're doing two things. Tariffs are going to raise revenues, and then we're also stamping out waste, fraud, and abuse in the government and bringing down the expenses and spending. And we're not going to get credit for either of those with the CBO scoring. So you know, when your audience, when American people see these CBO scores, there could be large, but there is a substantial amount of tariff income. There's a substantial amount of savings.
While all this is happening, consumer sentiment has definitely taken a bit of a dive. Expectations for inflation have gone up. Banks like Goldman are cutting their GDP forecast, saying potentially the Fed is going to have to cut rates, not the good kind of cuts, the kind of cuts because they're nervous about growth. How concerned are you that the timing of all this is going to be incredibly challenging because of how the American consumer, how corporate America is feeling at this moment?
Well, it tells me a couple of things. One, we got to get the tax bill done quickly, so because that's a confidence builder. And two, we're seeing sentiment surveys from the American people, but we haven't actually seen them take action. If the households actually thought that there were going to be inflation, if their real inflation expectations had increased, what would they be doing? They'd be hoarding goods, and they would be demanding wage increases, and neither one of those has happened yet.
So at the moment, you're not concerned about some of the soft data we're seeing?
No, I see nothing, and one of the great things, many great things about being a Treasury is we have lots of business people come through, and everything we're seeing in the economy is still very solid.
And executives haven't voiced any of these concerns onto you?
No, there's some idiosyncratic things, but in terms of the expectations actually turning into hard data, none of them have seen it yet.
Now that you're working on the tax bill, and of course tariffs at the moment are out of the way, what else is on the agenda for you for the rest of the year?
Well, we have the Ukraine deal that's coming up. We've gone to maximum pressure on Iran, so a big part of Treasury is national security. And then we are doing a big push on deregulating in a smart, safe, and sound way the regulated financial institutions, which is going to allow for the private sector, not the government sector, to grow.
When it comes to international, where are you with Iran, Ukraine and the mineral deal?
I believe we may have a team from Ukraine coming over as soon as the end of this week or the beginning of next week. Ukrainians have, I believe that they've hired counsel. And what we did was after the incident in the White House on, I believe it was February 28th, we were going to sign a 4-page deal that was parameters of understanding. And at Treasury, we took the opportunity to move forward to the big deal. So this is the exact same deal that would have resulted from the 4-page signature deal. So we've just fast forwarded, and we didn't want to lose any time because we believe this deal is so important for the American people, for the Ukrainian people, and for the peace process.
So it sounds like in the next 2 weeks you're going to have this deal.
You know what's funny is coming is the only thing you will have soon.
When it comes to Iran,
okay,
since you mentioned
the
that,
only tariff-free action you'll be able to do is basically sit there
the tax deals
and
underway.
masturbate.
When it comes to Iran, do you think we could see secondary tariffs, secondary sanctions?
Well, we've already seen sanctions. For the first time, U.S. Treasury sanctioned a so-called teapot refinery, which is a private sector refinery in China, and they are the buyers of the Iranian oil, and we could see more of that.
Wow, interesting. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, you've been very generous with your time today. We really appreciate it here at Bloomberg TV. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Joe Cayley, of course, that was the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. The sense I got from him is when it comes to these tariffs, it is a ceiling, it is a cap. Says to me that this administration is willing to negotiate with trading partners.
All right, Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Hordern live at the White House with the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Thank you so much. And of course, we did hear from President Trump the suggestion that if countries would like to see exemptions, they're going to have to lower their rates or terminate their tariffs, to use the word of the president. We'll have much more on this shortly and get some political analysis from our panel this evening. Still ahead here on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Isn't it funny that Trump tariffed Israel but not Russia? Bro, what kind of trade do we have with Russia? 2.1 trillion wiped from the stock market, and Trump wants to raise 700 billion in these tariffs. This is going to be so stupid. Help, I'm in a do not come state. There's no such thing. Brave warriors, you will always be able to come. They will never be able to stop your revolutionary optimism. They will never be able to stop your power, your prowess. Your sexual prowess will be the only weapon you wield against all of these tariffs. After all, at the end of the day, even if you do not have materials to consume, we still have our imagination. And until they put a tariff on imagination, you will still be able to come, and you'll be coming so hard. You'll say, please, Mr. President, I don't want to come no more. I'm going to come. Oh, man, what a day. What a day. Canada and Mexico, targets of Trump's previous rounds of tariffs, and are the United States' top trading partners were not mentioned for additional tariffs in the president's charts in a detailed country-by-country documents handed out to reporters in the Rose Garden. If Canada and Mexico are left out of the country-specific tariffs announced by Trump today, and it looks that way, this will be a significant capitulation as both nations continue to face tariffs plus sectoral tariffs such as on steel and aluminum as well as on autos. The majority of the nations listed for reciprocal tariffs on the documents distributed to reporters are developing economies. They will include world's poorest nations, South Sudan, Burundi, and Central African Republic, as well as countries in the throes of war, e.g. Sudan. This is the shit you should get banned for. If you don't come, China has won. That's what the best they're saying. Yeah. Russia and Belarus are the only former Soviet states not included in Donald Trump's sweeping new reciprocal tariffs. Ukraine faces a 10% tariff, EU 20%, China 34%. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know how. What is this? Genetically engineered cat girls are possible, scientists say, but we lack funding. Is this still coming, Elon Musk? Of course. Yeah, this is before he got comstered. Correction, Russia is not the only country subjected to tariffs. I regret not subject to tariffs. North Korea is also exempted. U.S. trade with North Korea is heavily embargoed, but it's not zero. Iran, also subject to heavy embargoes, is on Trump's tariff list at 10%. Quick clip from Chomsky on treats.
Is to maximize profit and market share. And they also have a goal for their target, namely the population. They have to be turned into completely mindless consumers of goods that they do not want. You have to develop what are called created wants. So you have to create wants. You have to impose on people what's called a philosophy of futility. You have to focus them on the insignificant things of life, like fashionable consumption. I'm just basically quoting business literature, and it makes perfect sense. The ideal is to have individuals who are totally dissociated from one another, whose conception of themselves, the sense of value, is just
Agent 47.
How many created wants can I satisfy? We have huge industries, public relations industry is a monstrous industry, advertising and so on, which are designed from infancy to try to mold people into this desired pattern.
The aforementioned treats getting hit. Oh, I already talked about Vietnam, yes. The U.S. will tariff products from Vietnam at a 46% rate, could heavily impact Switch 2 pricing, possibly globally. Nintendo shifted Switch 2 production from China to Vietnam, Cambodia to avoid tariffs. Others include 34% tariffs on China, 49% on Cambodia, 24% on Japan, 20% on the EU, and more. It's like Donald Trump heard. It's like if Donald Trump heard Nintendo's announcement this morning and was like, I'm going to give a much larger tariff to Nintendo. Everything computer. No Nintendo. You thought you could bring the Switch 2 to a different market. Well, guess what? That market will be hit by tariffs too. Anyway, everything is Tesla. Everything is Nintendo. Apparel stocks getting hit. Yeah, clothing will take forever to reshore. Yeah, so I mean, here's what Ryan Grimm is saying, right? And this is correct. North America could genuinely be self-sufficient, though it might take us like 10 years to get there, and would be a brutal transition, but it would be a good thing in the end. Hard to see the U.S. do it solo without a huge collapse in standard of living. But anyway, Trump seems to expect us to do it in a few days. Good luck to us. Like, every country has no country can be fully self-sufficient, okay? I don't know why Ryan Grimm is a Jushaist, okay? Ryan Grimm is upholding the immortal science of Marxist-Leninist Jushaism, which I don't agree with. I don't even think it's necessarily a good thing to be entirely self-sufficient. I think it's fine to offshore certain products, or there's obviously not, like, what do you do with rubber? You know what I mean? What are you supposed to do? Invent it? And this is why he says North America and not the United States of America, because he's talking about Mexico and Canada as well. But even then, I think ultimately, there is not all matter of international trade is bad. But in the short term, I don't think Americans that only care about treats and the cost of living in general will allow this kind of market shock to go on without severe repercussions. Because, as I've said, it's the only thing that holds the American society together, okay? The only thing that holds American society together is the fact that the labor aristocracy still benefits from the uneven exchange from the global South, where no matter how low prices get, there's a lot of shit that you can purchase that make you feel like you're in a better position overall. When you can't purchase those things now, all of a sudden you're going to be like, what's the entire project for? What are we doing? America only cares about the short term, so this it makes sense. This will piss them off. There's also the other side of this, which is like, how are we certain that this will boost domestic manufacturing? Not even in a short time frame, but in any time frame whatsoever. And how will that be beneficial? How will that be beneficial for American labor in general? Because let's say you bring back manufacturing, but now Americans are in an infinitely shittier position overall, and they're desperate to take on any job whatsoever. There's no curbing back on a lot of the big ticket items that Americans must purchase for upward social mobility, or services that they must hire for upward social mobility, or healthcare, right? Or housing, shelter. If you don't fix any of those problems and you bring back manufacturing, people are in an incredibly desperate predicament where they'll go and work at these factories with diminished labor protections, with diminished worker protections. They still can't afford the treats that they want to afford. They're in a worse position overall. It's unsustainable. It's completely unsustainable, both in the short term and in the long term, especially when so stupid, especially without trying to find a solution to the cost of living crisis for all of the important necessities, all the important things that you need, goods and services that you need for survival, upward social mobility, and things like that. And if the manufacturing capabilities of America is boosted, and yet it doesn't actually yield better labor protections or higher wages in general, and it's just mostly automated manufacturing anyway, and the labor force that still works